Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out Blood Hunt issue 5 by Jed MacKay, Pepe Larraz and Marta Garcia. Marvel's summer vampire event comes to an explosive ending as the reunited Avengers attack Blade and his Coven, while Doctor Strange and Clear continue to deal with Doctor Doom, who wants Stephen's Sorcerer Supreme power and title in order to help them deal with Blade and the vampires. So I'm a little disappointed that they have already revealed the next event, which is going to be a big Doom event, thanks to Doom abusing the Sorcerer's powers. And I get it, you gotta advertise events, you've gotta, set up stuff, but they could have at least waited until this issue was out before doing so, because it kind of ruined what was going to happen at the end here, even though I think we kind of all knew that Doctor Doom was going to betray them. He's a villain, of course he was. The Avengers meanwhile battle the Blood Coven, while Thor, who has had run-ins with Varney decades ago, battles the possessed Blade. Say what you will about how this event is set out, but goddamn does Jed know his Marvel history. I love how he's building this event off so much that has already happened within the pages of these comics, stretching all the way back to the 1960s, and not relying on, creating a new character or concept we've never really actually seen in Marvel history before, and relying on us, believing that this brand new threat that's never been around can take down the Avengers and stuff. It's all built on Marvel history. I really appreciate that. I also like that it gives a sense that these characters have been around each other for a very long time. Like Blade makes mention that he thought that him and Thor might have like a kinship in what Varney is doing, thanks to them being around for as long as they have been and them being, more long-lived than everyone else. And of course, Thor doesn't see it that way at all. But I like that there's this idea that there's this sort of weird kingship between some of these characters who have lived very long. While the Avengers win at first, Wanda's decision not to cast the Montesi formula, the spell that will destroy not just every vampire, but everything that has even just a little bit of evil in its heart, which really is everything alive. She doesn't obviously want to do that because she's gone through that before, and I completely understand that, but it's because of this the Blood Coven prey on the weakness, tearing Vision's arm off and defeating most of the team as Doom convinces Strange to hand over his power and title, making Doctor Doom the new Sorcerer Supreme, which will be explored more in November's big Doom-focused event. Blade's daughter also makes a reappearance, making sure to tell us to go and read the tie-in to the event, even though she should have probably actually been a big part of this book. Seeing her purpose was to prepare her to have her kill her father, and I like the idea that, like as she says in this issue, her father taught her to become a blade, and that is what she's going to be, because she's going to have to kill her father, or at least stab him in the heart with a blade, being that only someone from his bloodline can kill him. While the Avengers and even the Moon Knights battle the Darkhold infused Blade, Doom conducts his special ritual, utilizing the skills of each of the Strange Academy students he had gathered to help power the spell, being that they're all from different species or races that have some sort of magical connection to them. I just want to jump back to Moon Knight also appearing in this issue, because last issue they made a big hoo-ha about him coming back. This was Mark Spector coming back from the dead and leading an army of Moon Knights. Something which I think should have been a bit more of something they should have focused on a little bit, just because Jed's obviously written Moon Knight quite a fair bit. He's going to be writing the new series when he debuts Mark back as the Moon Knight. So you'd think that they would work something in so he would write this, or I mean, kudos to him for not doing that and not relying on things he's written before and trying to, expand it and, kind of make it a little bit bigger than it is. But it's really strange. You bring these characters back almost to immediately sort of sideline them and not really do much with them. And I mean, to be fair, there is a lot going on in this book. There is quite a fair bit happening in this book, and I think that's probably indicative of the fact that some of these issues of this series didn't really do much, so this is kind of like a rush to the end. But I would have liked to have seen a bit more Moon Knight, or a bit more of like Khonshu and everything now that he is free, since that story isn't actually revealed of like what's he going to be up to now, since Khonshu was also freed from Asgard last issue as well. Apart from the Avengers and all of the Moon Knights and everything, Blade's daughter and Dracula also arrives, and Miles also wants some payback on Blade for turning him into a vampire, and Blade's daughter manages to drive the sword through her father's heart. However, However, he doesn't think that that's going to be enough, but luckily Miles is there as well and actually helps her. And this is actually kind of neat because obviously Blade turned Miles into a vampire, and that technically makes Miles part of his bloodline since he, turned him, fed on his blood, vice versa, that sort of stuff. So Miles is also the one who was able to be there and help Blade's daughter drive the stake further into his heart and free Blade from Varney's control, exorcising the vampiric demon within him. I quite like this bit. I thought it was quite smart, and it also kept Miles involved in the story since he's been involved with Blade for quite some time. Even before this event begun, he was helping Blade deal with some vampire problems, so I like that they've kept that sort of running and kept that little bit of a partnership they had going as well, with Miles feeling quite betrayed by Blade and taken advantage of, so I like he gets sort of like a little bit of revenge here. At the same time all of this is happening, Doom's magic kicks in and reverses the Darkhold, covering the world, exposing it to the sunlight behind it. The world is saved, and it's thanks to the Avengers and Doctor Doom, but it doesn't end there, as we actually find out that vampires are seemingly no longer weak to sunlight, something Dracula is both surprised and happy about, since now his race, since he was obviously fostering a more peaceful race of vampires over in Chernobyl and just kind of wanted to stick to themselves, but now they can actually experience life and actually, as he says, come out of the shadows and come out of the darkness and actually be accepted, which is quite interesting, and I'd like to see a bit more of that. That seems like an interesting way to take Dracula. It's not all fun in the sun though, as of course Doom betrays Stephen, claiming that while he saved the world now, there is still a lot of work to do saving it more, banishes Stephen's astral form before contacting the entire world and telling them that Doom is the new Sorcerer Supreme. It really is kind of crazy how much of this final issue in a Blade-centric vampire story had very little to do with either of those things. They felt very secondary, and Blade is barely a character. Varney isn't at all. And it just felt like this issue mostly, or the last two issues really, wanted to focus on Doctor Doom's story and set him up for his big coming event. Now, of course, these comics are written months in advance. This comic was probably written, 2 or 3 months ago, long time ago. So there is no way that Jed or anyone involved in this comic would have known the news that would have dropped at San Diego Comic-Con last weekend, that being Robert Downey Jr. coming back as Doctor Doom. But their timing is one hell of a coincidence. We kind of go from this Blade-centric story into like, oh no, we've got to kind of make it all about Doctor Doom. And it just happens after all this big news about Doctor Doom being in the Avengers movies. It's a very strange coincidence. I just wish it had a lot more focus on Blade and his immediate supporting cast, like his daughter, Dracula, the Moon Knights, the stuff that Jet had been building with Hunter's Moon and the Midnight Mission and Tigra, and all of those really interesting characters, since it would have been really great to have a big time Marvel event headlined by all of these characters, except they were quickly ushered off into their own tie-ins, which probably didn't do too well because there was like 50 odd tie-ins that this book had for some reason, and instead this main book was just really just the Avengers fighting against the threat, as it usually always is, even though they had 2 separate tie-ins which focused on Avengers teams. Also, some of those tie-ins are still continuing after this event, which is just really damn strange. Everything should really just ended just before this issue and kind of like all fed into it, but it never really did. It kind of felt like this mainline book was kind of like the supplemental to the tie-ins, which is the opposite of how it actually should be. This whole event was just really so strange. Chunks of it were fantastic. I really like that Jed knows his apples and oranges when it comes to Marvel history, and how he used it to build up this event instead of introducing us to yet another new unstoppable force we've never seen before. And when it did focus on smaller characters like the Midnight Mission, Blade's daughter and everything, it shined. It was really great, and it was great seeing those characters get the spotlight. But there was just not enough of that, and it turned the main book into a pretty much second reading to the tie-ins, with the tie-ins kind of acting as the main book, oddly enough. The exact opposite of what you want for an event. For a final issue, Blood Hunt issue 5 felt more interested in setting up what would come next with Doctor Doom than actually telling a meaningful story with Blade, who even in this last issue is just kind of like quickly swept away to make room for Doom. I'm going to give this issue a 4 out of 10.